Hello, and welcome back to an episode of InteSoul Leadership. I'm Yvette Owens and the CEO of Destiny Speak. It is my pleasure to always bring things all about leadership, how we can shine and help others around us shine. I have the esteemed pleasure of having Raghu Kale from Striking Ideas. We met recently over the holidays, and it's just been a pleasure to just even have conversations with him subsequent. And we're going to talk about the real true meaning of excellence, the real concept of excellence within our workplaces and even everywhere how we show up. So welcome, Raghu, and can you share more with the people about who you are and what you do?
Thank you so much, Yvette. It was wonderful meeting you during the holidays, and the celebration was on. And thanks to our common friends who brought us together, and I enjoyed our conversation with you. And just to give you a small snapshot of my background, I have worked nearly 3 decades now. I started my career with early days working with the industrial companies, shot blasting machines, furnaces, boilers, all about energy and all of that kind of thing. And then from there, I moved into running an advertising agency of my own, worked with clients about multiple things that I did. And I was getting, in my mind, I was getting stagnated because though I had creative teams working, I'm not learning anything new, I thought. And I took a radical step and I made a transition to take a way. My successor, who was my first employee, I gave him the reins. I said, "You run the show, and it will not be appropriate for me to hold any stake in the company." So he ran the company, and I moved out. And I took a radical view and I joined Honeywell, which was a Honeywell 150 business units worldwide, and they were having a joint venture in Asia Pacific. So I joined that company. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to really see the systemic view of communication. And so I went into the corporate world, and then I worked with board members and others. It's a conglomerate that had a joint venture with Honeywell, and that took me the conglomerate was in multiple areas of businesses. Whether it is jewelry, watches, hospitality, chemicals, steel, you name it. Today, that conglomerate has over 1 million employees. When I left them, they were over a half a million. It was 650 million. Turnover was across multiple countries. So I had an opportunity to work with a conglomerate, which is the Tata Enterprises. One of the brands that they acquired was the British Steel, which is erstwhile British Steel, and then the Jaguar Land Rover and others. So working with at the very with the board members and the chairman of that holding company gave me a huge sense of how excellence is driven. And one of my roles was to be a communicator looking at, so we had over 100 companies. So when I called for a CEO meet, we had about 80 to 100 CEOs in the room, and each one had their own working with them. So we in fact created a resource group internally in consulting, which is where I grew my understanding, learning, and organizational excellence. So it's been a fascinating journey for me. Moved into the US and we looked at multiple things. And about 5 years ago, I moved out of that conglomerate. I started my own company called Striking Ideas LLC in 4 areas. One is most certainly publishing, because one likes to help authors, work with authors, leaders, all about nonfiction. Never done a fiction books, but specifically in publishing. So either we write and we publish for companies, or we help authors and then we publish for them. So these are the 2 areas in which it's all about publishing. Second area is very specifically to do with my creative work. I've probably uh, produced about 200 odd short documentaries and films. So that's another area, the passion projects on doing that. And the third area is strategy execution. Everyone has a strategy, but my role over the years has been to work with companies, help them execute strategies. In some pockets, I've done that for multiple companies. So, do you have a strategy map? So, we help companies work out on the strategy maps and see how the execution can happen. And the fourth area is all about brand persona, a corporate brand and a brand identity, because there's so much that goes into a brand which is not visual. One part is
Mm.
visual, but there is so much more under the iceberg. So I work with companies, I help them develop a brand identity. So these are the four areas, and it's been exciting. And thank you for inviting me to this wonderful subject that you have picked up on excellence.
Yes, thank you. Wow, that's a vast experience. And we're so glad that you have the time to share with us. So, you definitely have something to say about excellence and really what that means. So, can you tell us, even through what you're looking and where your experience is taking you in a very practical way, what is excellence and how has it helped you in your decision making?
So your question is layered in three parts. I think we are talking about purely what excellence, what is this animal, what does this excellence really
Right.
mean? And a second part, it can mean to a person or it can mean to an organization.
Yep.
These are two different ways to look at it.
Mhm.
And the third thing is, how do you really practice what you preach, when you're preaching excellence? So where do you want me to start? Do you want me to start the very,
Let's start at the top. Let's make
right at the
sure we
start?
have a good foundation and a grounding for everybody because, we say the word excellence all the time, but I don't know if we mean, some people think it means perfection, right? I know that's not what it means. So let's clear the air
All
and
right.
bring clarity to everyone.
Uh, in fact, it's so timely and it's so funny. Sometimes divine intervention, plays a nudge. I've been working on a book on exactly defining what excellence truly means, and so let me break it up. When you look at excellence dimensions for a person, uh, and I think there's a lot written on this. I think even Leonardo da Vinci, how uh, and he was not too far long ago. It just you know a few hundred years ago he was around, and he has practiced some of the principles in his own thing. So someone
Mm,
who's interested in knowing how to implement, you learn something continuously, you discard something, the ability to unlearn, learn,
mm,
experiment, be curious through your life, and you so he can be a great example to look at it. But when we deep dive into excellence, what it truly means, I go back into the very ancient uh, the ancient nuggets of wisdom that you have,
mm,
and that takes me to 14,000 BEC. You forget the Greeks. Greeks are 100 and 1,500 BC. I'm going back to 14,000 BC and beyond. The
mhm,
literature that is written on the Vedic literature, uh, from where my lineage comes from the there's so much in it on excellence at a
mhm,
personal level, because one of the words that I have found being used by the Greeks is arte. They say that this is the essence of excellence, but that word has traveled from the Sanskrit into the Greeks. This is
mhm.
the missing links, which is what my book will is researched on and looked at how this happens. So there are two parts to it. I won't go too much into the personal side of it, which I think everybody can see and look at it. But you touched upon the leadership facet.
Right.
Now, leadership facet is also another book which I'm writing, which is on leadership. Leadership has three dimensions, as I see it in my new book. One is the legacy part. You're concerned about what kind of legacy I'm going to leave behind
Mhm,
as a leader, blah, 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 and you want to look at it. So that is a distortion. Then there is another part, the what am I inspired? What is this life worth living for? Am I doing the
mm,
right thing? Whatever. And then you're looking at the inspiring part or the vision part. When you're engaging with that, you will have something which will inspire a lot of people who will want to follow you.
Yeah.
And so these are two dimensions. I've seen people deceive themselves by thinking that they want to be a great leader.
Hmm.
No, it starts with what kind of person you want to be.
That's
So when
right.
you forget about, so you are deceiving yourself if you're constantly thinking of, I want to be a great leader. Ah, that's the fallacy. That's the mirage you're
Hmm.
chasing. Then you're not chasing. True leaders don't really believe that they want to leave a legacy. They lose sleep over what purpose they want to serve, and they
Hmm.
forget about, I want to be a great leader,
Hmm.
and that is very difficult to achieve. And so when you look at that, then the excellence part which you brought out, I'll be very brief on this because we have limited time. I won't give you the whole narrative for the book, but what kind of person I want to be, and how can I be useful, and what can I do? In the contemporary world, you are certain leaders misunderstood. If I say the names, people will have a different view of whatever, but they are putting all the risks, all the things behind something that they're passionate about.
Right.
And they're not worried about what legacy they're going to leave behind, but they are doing that. You got to find those kind of people. And that is excellence personified, in a sense that
Mm.
they really do the right things and they're trying to do that. So if you find those kind of people, you are inspired by them. So that's about, I will touch on this, what it means at the personal level. I think those seven principles of Leonardo, and deep down, if you go into the ancient wisdom, you will find a lot on what there is to say. The word Sanskrit word arati today is understood as something, as a ritual, but there is a deep down is devotion. And
Mm.
if you look at Steve Jobs, he would lose sleep over something. He didn't want to say that I want to be a great leader. He never. I don't think he was losing sleep over something that he wanted to create, something fascinating that he wanted to do. And then he did it. He got thrown out. He came back. Fantastic case study in front of our eyes. We see that happening.
Right.
Like that, there are many other leaders. So, but then now you go to the third level, and you look at, what do organizations really do? How do you, and that's where the version of excellence awards and all of that happens. in
Right.
fact in fact I would say that this whole matrix, or the whole framework of excellence, which has started in the US in the mid 80s, and I've studied that very carefully, and I've uh, worked on with my team to replicate that and fashioned it around for the conglomerate that I worked for. And many countries around the world have templated that around what the US has done. Even the European model for quality excellence in Europe has been adapted by that. There is someone in Singapore, someone in the Scandinavian countries, even in uh, so there are some 30, 40 clones of this framework, which was started in the US. And the US came up with the framework of excellence because they were getting beaten up by the Japanese. So it was a reaction
Mm.
to create something so that our companies in the US will, be able to lead and do better. So it's a fascinating way in which the systemic view of excellence was brought into the conversation in the boardrooms and the operating leadership team. And the systemic excellence had certain principles where you say whether the process, do you have a good process? Is the process learning? In a sense, are you adapting the process? So there are certain fundamental grammatical principles around it to drive excellence. And I've done assessments for companies, I've done worked with teams. We have implemented those programs, which are multiple geographies. So it's fascinating way to see how the excellence for an organization,
Uh,
because think
yeah.
of it, what is an organization really?
Right. Right.
It's
And I
run-
think I like what you're bringing up, and I don't know that if we've done this well. It's around the passion piece that you mentioned, right? It's like, what's the person that I want to show up? as, even from an organization perspective? And then what's the passion? Because that passion drives the culture of that organization, right?
Yes, yes,
And
yes, yes.
so it's really like, we've all been asked that question. What would you do if you had endless time and you weren't getting paid for it, and your heart is still there? That's really where you're talking about where excellence is birthed, right? Um, and I think we might sometimes, from an organization, and especially the larger the organization becomes, we may lose sight of that.
In fact, that's where the point is. When you look at organizational excellence, you have to have everybody on the same page.
Right.
Unless you do that, you will not be able to achieve excellence in one pocket. And that's where, see, what is an organization? Organization is bunch of people meaningfully arranged.
Right.
The question is, why are they arranged in a certain way? Because organization is only a vehicle
That's right.
to get something done.
Mm-hmm.
If your desire is to do something good for the humanity in certain way, you create an organization so it serves the cause or purpose. If you're sharply focused only on profitability, that I want to make as much money as I can, I don't
That's
care
what
much
we do.
about that, low priority for me, whether I'm in healthcare or churning out medicines. My profitability to my stakeholders, I have to extract as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have laws to, clamp it down, or simple drugs. You want to make 1,000% profit on that, or 2,000% profit on that. The cost of drug is what, but no, my responsibility is to my shareholders. They've invested in my company. I must do that. So you can take a narrow view. So it all comes down to, when you have an organization and people, bunch of people meaningfully arranged to serve a certain purpose, you have to touch upon what is that purpose you're serving. Whether you are serving, whether it's going to serve humanity in certain way. So the excellence definition has to start permeating from there. And
Right.
then you get into, when you look at organizationally, our grammar is all about, is there a good approach?
Mm-hmm.
And then you understand if it is a good approach, in a sense, is it changing with the requirements of the changing in their environment? And then how well is this approach deployed? So you look at approach deployment, then you look at what is the result you're getting. And this won't happen overnight. It'll happen in 6 months, 10 months, 1 year. So evaluate the process accordingly. So the health of the process that works, is the process alive? And the
Right.
question is, do you have past practices, past thresholds that we have improved? So you have
Mm-hmm.
comparatives with the competition or similar processes. The comparative also benchmarks. So the process and the people behind it are making, so because organization is connected through processes. That's the nervous system of an organization.
Right.
In a human body, if you don't have nervous system, you will not be able to function.
That's
So
right.
the invisible part of an organization is the processes.
Right.
And the processes, if they become procedures, then they're rigid. Then you're
Right.
bureaucratic. They're not able to change it. You go by the blue book.
Right.
But
And
then
they
you
have to
have to
really come
change
out
that.
of,
So it
right.
makes much more dynamic. The organizational excellence is a very dynamic conversation, and it has to change continuously. And
Correct.
the problem there is the link between people, because
Mm,
process is only as good as people behind it make it
that's
happen.
right.
And if you recruit the wrong people with the wrong set of ideas and wrong priorities and wrong values and do that, the process is relegated to becoming less vibrant.
And
And
this really speaks to the communication piece too, right? Is like,
exactly, that's
why
where
did
the
we come
communication,
into existence? Why are we here? What was that
exactly,
passion that drove this organization to even become what it is? And so then, to your point, when I go out and I'm looking for, and I'm bringing on even investors or
exactly,
partner investors, they have to believe in what I'm believing in, so that we're all, to your point earlier, speaking the same language, have the same heart for the same cause, and then we're going to be able to be true. And then it's easier to reinforce it within that culture.
Absolutely.
Because if we just have people coming in, investing in the company, or even coming on board to work with the company because, oh, you're making a good profit, you're bringing in great return on investment, so I just want that. No, we really need to get back to how do we make sure we're always in every aspect of our organization reinforcing the why we exist as an organization. And I think we have a great opportunity across the globe to start to bring our organizations back to the true foundation of why they became became in existence, right?
Yes.
Because I think so often, especially over longevity and long periods of time, we lose that. We lose that thought process. But I really believe that this generation and the generations that follow it, they're more conscious and when and why they're joining organizations,
Oh, yeah.
even if they're not planning to stay for a long time, because they don't not necessarily believe that they have to live out their life in any one organization. They want to make an impact, they want to make a positive impact, and they want to do it as much as possible. So
I
I
think
think
so.
this is a fascinating. So the next question I have for you is, all right, excellence is starting with my passion, my heart, as to why I want to serve this pocket of consumers, right? And my heart for the type of people that I want to bring in to help me organize the work and get it done. If
Yes.
I'm not there, or we look around and we say we've shifted from that that strong foundation of that supports excellence, how do I start to make the shifts? What basic practicality habits can we offer or leaders or even people in organizations so we can start swinging that pendulum back to the wholesomeness of excellence?
I touched on the leadership piece, which is legacy, uh, vision, inspiring something that they are passionate about, serving a larger cause, and then acting and doing things uh, in their as they are as a person. I've seen some leadership coaches falsely teaching that if you're going in a meeting, then you acquire this kind of persona. If you're going for that kind of meeting, then you show compassion. If you're doing this, you be more authoritative. So this is pseudo way of fake it till you make it kind of thing. I
Mm,
don't prescribe to that. That is the worst kind of coaching that I've seen, and there are many who are doing that.
mhm.
It all comes down to disregarding all that if you really want to do the right thing.
Right.
And leadership is a byproduct. It's not something that it's like live to eat or eat to live. What are you here for? I
Mm,
mean, you're going to have that debate. Some people eat to live and some people live to eat. So you choose which is your battle. So similarly
right.
with leadership is the same thing. You want to fake it till you make it, or you want to be genuinely who you are. You know
Right.
your flaws, and you will do it, and you will learn all the time, and then you will achieve something. And when you don't know something, you say, really, I don't know. Very
Mhm.
hard to do, but I've had leaders where I had the fortune of working with them. Great leaders, fantastic, great leaders. So learned a lot. So to your question, if you're leading an organization, if you really want to achieve your organization to the levels of excellence, then there are certain methods, certain engagements that need to be followed through. It's a whole 6 month engagement program which can be unleashed on that. I've done this in the past. So, what facet of that are you wanting me to highlight?
So if you could just give like three or a couple of examples that have made the difference for organizations that you work.
Oh yeah, I think uh, there was a the organizations have a maturity in the system's view of thinking, and people have improved the systems view of an organization. It was
Mm-hmm.
very weak, and it took them 18 months to a year and 3 years and 4 years. I've seen organizations and I've worked with organizations where the maturity of systemic view has improved over time.
Okay.
And it has not improved on its own, because people who are responsible for certain processes, we had processes which we evaluated, which are starting from multiple areas. So we look at leadership. How does leaders review their own organization? How? Which means you need to know what kind of methods are used, upward communication, downward
Mm-hmm.
communication. How does the bad news travel? Bad news never travels very quickly upwards. Good news
Right.
travels faster than bad news. And so the culture of openness and all of that. So evaluating leadership processes itself, including how do you set directions for an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question is, you have to start looking at what are the strategic processes that you have. How do you develop a strategy for organization? What kind of environment is changing rapidly, and you have a large footprint across multiple geographies, you're growing, but are you
Mm-hmm.
taking all the nuances into account? Are you blindsided because some technology is moving faster and is going to affect your business? So the strategy processes are evaluated. Do you have a great strategy? Then
Right.
that's not enough. Where my role came in was strategy deployment. How do you execute the strategy?
Yeah.
So and of course the communication plays a very important role in the leadership part, in the strategy planning phase, strategy execution phase. So these are just two areas I talked about: strategy and leadership. Then
Right.
the third area is how do you collect the right kind of information for decision making. Those are
Mm-hmm.
processes all around that. So you have customers. How do you engage with different segments of customers? Do they know how to reach out? Do you what? So there are whole wide range of processes which are looked at in an organization. And then human resources. Are you attracting the right people? Are you training the right people? What you're doing with them? So the whole area. And then it comes to the processes part, how you're designing your processes, how you're implementing
Right.
your processes, and those all these 6 areas leading into the results. Results is a fascinating space, because there are some results that you see which are non-financial results, which are
Mm-hmm.
preconditions for financial results. So there is a lead indicators, lag indicators. So when the leadership is concerned about the health of their systemic view, it's like going to the gym and toning your muscles and doing your six packs, and you want to be healthy and all of that. So organizationally, is your systemic view improving as you go along,
Yeah.
because the environment is changing rapidly, and
Mm-hmm.
are you readiness of your systems and processes to counter or be very when the downturn happened in 2008. I remember one of our CEOs, I was interviewing him in a large organization. He said we were able to, it's like a large battleship. How do you
Mm-hmm.
turn it very quickly? He
Right.
said the downturn hit so hard, the inventories and this that you had to just change so quickly. So I said, how did you manage? He said, we had the kind of goodwill with our supply chain that we called an emergency meeting, and certain people took,
Right.
certain partners took a financial hit because they didn't want. He said, we are going to take care of this part, we are not
Mm-hmm.
going to. So the agility with which they were able, why that was possible? Because the processes were not just within the organization. The processes were well entrenched into the supply chain with their strategic partner was suppliers.
Right.
So the CEO was telling me that we were able, and he says, thanks to all of the work that we did over the years
Right.
of my team, and where I worked on bringing the systemic view of organization, we nurtured that over 15, 20 years, nearly 15 years. 25 years was just celebrated in 2019. I made a short
Nice.
film for them as well. Dr. Henry, I think the
Nice.
opening lines were by Henry Kissinger. I shot him here in New York. But anyway, distracting away from there. So the invest. So the leadership is concerned about how everybody else is connected and on the same page, and they were able to achieve that. So assessing and evaluating the company on a, it comes down to leaders challenge of, am I running the business or am I
Mm,
changing the business?
mm,
And great leaders who are really driving true excellence are doing both at the same time.
yeah,
It's not about I'm running the business, I need to know how you are, but I need to know what is going to happen to us. Your strategy planning process is so much into the future. You're not planning 50 weeks or 100 weeks. You're able to see 3 years, 5 years and beyond the trends,
yeah,
and you're planning on that basis. Look at Apple, how they went through various cycles.
right,
There's some research that is going on into the future very well. They have the investments, they look at it, and newcomers too. I think smaller companies look at SpaceX, the way
mhm,
they have rampant. You think they didn't have the systems and processes and evaluation? They did that all the time, but they didn't go for awards.
right,
And that is a great distraction. When I see
mhm,
awards, I mean, your short sightedness for organizations to win awards is nice to have, but it's a sideshow. It's a
yeah,
distraction.
yeah. And I like the point that you bring up that you have to be able to be running the business as well as changing the
Oh, yeah,
business.
yeah, yeah.
But
At the same
the
time,
important thing about the change is don't just change for the sake of change.
impossible.
Change has to be tied to a real strategy.
Oh, yeah.
That what we've been talking about all this time is that strategy that change has to be tied to you enforcing and reinforcing the
Yes,
excellence of the passion and why you exist, which really again defines and reinforces the culture. And
yes,
so that way, as long as you consistently do that, everybody will know what are we about. If somebody asks them, "Oh, what does this organization do, and why do they do it, and what are they about?" Anybody, anywhere in the organization should be able to just spout that off because it's so ingrained. Because leadership and everyone is true to and committed to the excellence of that passion or the reason for being.
it's
It's been
not.
a pleasure
It's
having you here. You are such a wealth of knowledge and experience. We're looking forward to your book coming out. Can you tell us more about when we can expect that, or what's coming up next for you, so and how people can follow you? We'll make sure all of that information is in the show notes, but how would you like to leave this audience this morning?
I would love to see. I'm new in Connecticut because I worked globally across many geographies, many countries, and I was in New Jersey, closer to New York, where you had to go to office multiple times just before the pandemic. When I left the conglomerate with the changes that were going on, I left the company and I started striking ideas. And then pandemic and all of that, I moved to Connecticut. So in this area, I hardly know anybody. I've yet to, get to know people, get to meet people, and I've done some work with some clients, but mostly in Asia and other places. But yeah, I think there is a wealth of engagement that we can do on multiple things. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons for your podcast is I'm sure you have a network of connectivity in this
Absolutely.
part of the world, and I look forward to helping companies and working with them on multiple areas where I can bring my knowledge into making a positive difference. And that's the thought I would leave you with, and I will thank you for taking the time to bring me onto your show.
Absolutely. And we're going to definitely stay connected because all of those aspects of your business just intrigue me.
And you asked me
And
what can we expect with the books. Those two
yep.
books will take another year or so. But my past book, which I wrote, was on loyalty and sacrifice, which you can check it out and read it. It's on Amazon. It redefines the whole. When you look at customer loyalty, there's a narrow definition of repeat purchase. And my question is, when you look at war veterans and you look at employees going beyond the call of duty, a sense of sacrifice is very much embedded in the definition of loyalty. Whether you look at your family, You don't announce to your family saying that you have sacrificed something for the welfare of them or good, to support them, but sacrifice is very much embedded in that. And so the common definition of loyalty when you extend to customers is a bit skewed. So that book really redefines it and relooks at it for all stakeholders. So you might check that
What's the
out.
name of the book?
Loyalty and Sacrifice: Ushering New Horizons. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll make sure people understand that. Thank
Yes.
you all for joining this episode. We'll be back again with even more intriguing guests. And hopefully, you've enjoyed what Raghu has been able to share with us. You can find him on LinkedIn. And we'll put all of that contact information in the show notes. Thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And remember, seek excellence in all that you do. Seek excellence. Don't just do because you're doing. Seek excellence. And then if you're in a leadership role, the people who are following you, the people who are working with you, depend on you, inspiring them through your excellence. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.